Hi everyone, welcome to a tactics video. This time we're reviewing the Astra Militarum Praetor Armored Assault Launcher. Now if you've never heard of this unit before, you'd be forgiven because it's an overly expensive Forgeworld kit or resin kit, and actually was lucky enough to pick up one from China, which I call Forgeworld, for about a third of the price. So starting off with that, it's a key point to make is if you do wish to buy the official kit, it'll cost you £150 in the UK, equivalent currency wherever you're based around the world. So that's exceptionally expensive. And I know I've bought a recast, but putting this in together was an absolute nightmare. And I can put a link to a video here, which basically unboxes the kit I received. And again, it's a recast, so the quality probably isn't as good as the real thing, but from some of the subscribers and supporters out there, they're saying actually the quality I got isn't too bad compared to what they've seen. So huge thing to start is it's an expensive model. It is a massive brick of resin, and I'll show you one physically in a moment. You can see it in the background. But that's the first place to start, is this thing is expensive and it's a very large model. Now I'll flash up in the screen after I do some post editing, sort of showing the size comparison, but just to sort of illustrate the size of this monster, this is the actual thing itself. So you can see I've got like probably normal size hands as far as people go, and this thing is absolutely ginormous. And as I'll flash up some photos, as I said, you can see the physical size of this. And the key thing is to basically show, which I'll put now, is the size compared to a Manticore and also a Rogal Dawn battle tank. So that is something to be considered from a tactical point of view, is this thing is an absolute monster. So potentially hiding it behind terrain pieces could be an issue, but as we'll look at in a moment, it probably is going to be okay, given it's such a strong, survivable model. So I think another way to conceptualize this and think about it is the point cost of this unit is 275 points. Now that is not cheap, and again as reference, a Rogal Dawn is 260 points. And a Manticore probably is the closest equivalent, is 180 points. So it's more expensive than a Rogal Dawn, more expensive than a Manticore, both from a price, physical cash point of view and a points point of view. And one way I've basically sort of thought up to help conceptualize this again is that you're basically getting, when we look at the rules, a Manticore and a Scout Sentinel together. And the rules will basically talk to that. So that's 240 points. Versus 275 points. So is this competitively costed? I don't think it is when we have to look into it. But let's just look, go into the actual core stats of this model in case you don't know it. So this is from Wikipedia, and you can basically see 10-inch move, toughness 11, 2+ save, 18 wounds, leadership 7 and OC 5. So this is very close to the Rogal Dawn. The only thing missing here is the toughness on a Rogal Dawn is 12, but a 2+ save, 18 wounds is very survivable. And as reference again, a Manticore is toughness 10 and a Basilisk is toughness 9. And they've both got a 3+ save and 11 wounds, obviously, and OC 3. So toughness 11 and 18 wounds and 2+ save makes it obviously way more survivable. Toughness 11 probably is only good against, say, strength 5 weapons, where they go to suddenly wounding on 6s, but I don't know if there's many strength 5 weapons out there, and if you do know, let me know. But I've never really come across any strength 5 weapons. So potentially, the increased toughness is probably not going to make a huge difference. I could be wrong, but obviously a 2+ save and 18 wounds means this thing will hang on a lot longer. So even against like las cannons, when you're in cover, because you're always being covered in 10th edition, you've got a 4+ save, which is pretty respectable, versus the Manticore, obviously with a 5+ save, which got less chance of surviving. OC 3 on a Manticore versus OC 5 means this thing can definitely hold your home objective. Given if you do get, say, some deep striking shenanigans and they try and charge onto the objective and get 5 bodies on there, you may kill one in Overwatch potentially, but you've got a better chance of holding the objective versus OC3, obviously. Now, as I said, 18 wounds, a Manticore's got 11 wounds, and then a Scout Sentinel has got 7. So my logic is basically, works for me at least, in the sense you've got 18 wounds across the two Manticore and a Scout Sentinel versus the Praetor. Okay, so weaponry, what it comes equipped with is 2 heavy bolters. You can have a stubber, which you'll always take. And then where the magic happens is basically the Praetor Launcher. It's got 2 settings or options. Adequately named as the Firestorm and the Foe Hammer. I like to think of the Firestorm as a napalm strike, and the Foe Hammer probably is like a, I don't know, like some sort of like direct fire anti-tank weapon. Now, when you look at this, it's actually quite interesting the way they've set this up, and and this is why I think this unit actually has potential, because it can deal with different things very effectively. So Firestorm, 120 inches range, it's whatever it wants, like a Manticore. 2d6 shots, which is blast. Hitting on 4s at 6, AP1 and 2 damage. Now the key things to look at is that it says ignore cover, and obviously it's got the heavy keyword. So if it ignores cover, that means your AP1 is always an AP1. So, you know, Space Marine Primaris dudes are saving always on a 4 as opposed to a 3. And of course, if you give other stratagem support on top, or other AP support, you could push it even further. Now 2 damage is the perfect damage to take out, let's call it medium infantry. So I'll define light infantry as 1 wound models, 2 wound models as medium, and then 3 or 4 wound models obviously as heavy infantry like Primaris, Space Marines or Custodes. So 2 damage is a perfect number, as opposed to say a Manticore, which obviously has got 3 damage for the Storm Eagle rocket, and you could possibly argue that that is inefficient usage of your damage output if you're putting 3 damage weapons into 2 wound models. And obviously, you know, D6 plus 1 is inferior to 2d6. Obviously 2d6 you could flunk it and roll 2, you can get 2, but the average roll you're going to get is 7 at least, yeah. And if you're going into blast targets, which is the intention of this one, you're going to be getting at least 8 out of that. So AP1 ignores cover. Oddly, when we think about it, it's achieving the same thing as a Manticore, which is AP2, because obviously with the indirect penalty, it's only AP1. Okay. So that I think is a key piece for me, is you've got options here. Yeah, you can do the Firestorm, as I said, which is good against infantry. 6-1-2 is a perfect setting, roughly. Take out infantry. Now let's look at the faux hammer. So firstly, same range, D6 plus 1 shots, like a Manticore. Hitting on 4s at strength 4, AP2, 3 damage. So obviously the 4 is taking into account the anti-monster and anti-vehicle 4+ ability. So again, the way to conceptualize this is versus the Manticore, which is strength 10, where the benefit occurs of the faux hammer over the Manticore is obviously into toughness 11 and higher targets. Because if it's toughness 10, you're obviously wounding on 4s, anti-monster or anti-vehicle, versus the Manticore also wounding on 4s. So the benefit occurs when you're shooting other very, very strong armored units or monsters. Now, I don't know too well, like I think, I'm trying to think, obviously things like Land Raiders, I think some of the Custodes, the big heavy shooters, are the Primarchs like Angron, are they toughness 11? I don't know, maybe some of the Demon Princes. So I think this, obviously, where it can actually work, there's going to be less potential units out there. But again, just having this ability is helpful, because there could be certain matchups where you do come into someone who's got loads of toughness 11 potentially units. Now I don't know other Satans, the Necron units, are they toughness 11 or 10? But I think having the options here is obviously very, very good. Now, again, the way to think about this is you've got a 1 unit here which can do 2 very different things. Either take out infantry with 2d6, 6-1-2, or take out a vehicle with, you know, potentially a equivalent of a strength 10, 2, 3 damage. Now, the Manticore, obviously, with its D6 plus 1 shots, is obviously inferior to the first one. But the thing about this is that, you know, you'll be knocking on the door of a vehicle which is toughness 10, obviously on a 4+, but you're murdering all infantry on a 2 or a 3, versus the Praetor Launcher is going to be murdering most infantry on a 3, if not a 4, into Primaris or Custodes, yeah, because their toughness is 6. Now that's, you know, I'm hopefully conceptualizing this to a relative degree. We have to remember that this is 275 points, so it's a load of points, and you are essentially, I think, paying for the wound count and the survivability. Now let's look at its actual specific rule. Now, targeting coordinates. So whilst this model has been affected by an order, each time it makes an attack with its Praetor Launcher, it doesn't suffer the penalty to the hit roll for attacking unit that is not visible to it. Okay, so if you receive a order from a tank commander, because it's got squadron keyword, that's important, or from Lord Solar, you're hitting on 2s flat out. So that obviously, because it's got the heavy keyword, it's taken an order, which means you are hitting on 2s. So suddenly, this unit is exceptionally accurate because, I mean, most of the time it's going to be sat at the back of the board, quite safe. It's going to just sit there and receive orders for 5 turns straight, and suddenly got all this DACA going in, hitting on 2s. Now, of course, the Manticore and the Basilisk, everything else can achieve that, but they achieve that via a Scout Sentinel, obviously, yeah? So the Scout Sentinel has to spot the target at the beginning of shooting phase, shoot a certain enemy unit within 18 of that. So that 18 is not super close, it's not like 12 inches, obviously, but it's far enough that, you know, you've got a bit of leeway, but it's not, you know, if you had just had to have line of sight, that would have been revolutionary. But 18 inches means you need to be, you know, potentially within have a chance of actually losing the Scout Sentinel to actually make the Manticore hit on 2s with the reroll 1, which is obviously very good, or the Praetor just does it from sitting there, receiving an order, hitting on 2s. Now that is very, very powerful. And something I said in previous videos is that it's ironic that the most accurate units in Astra Militarum are indirect fire ones. Because obviously you can achieve it for the Scout Sentinel to ignore the penalty, reroll 1s, or the Praetor Launcher can basically do it by just receiving an order and staying stationary. So that is very, very, very powerful, I think. Now, some other things I wanted to call out as I quickly go through this is that something to take note of, and it's only a minor point, is that its melee attack output is the 647 AP01 damage. Now, that's going to do, you know, maybe a bit of chip damage here and there, but the crucial element to me is being strength 7 versus the Manticore, which is only strength 6. Okay, the 3 attacks is also obviously half, but at strength 7, that means against all infantry, including heavy infantry, which is strength 6. When you use tank shock, you've got not only 7 dice, but you've got 9 dice because you're +2 strength. Yeah, so you actually got you're going to be putting in more mortal wounds if things get desperate and you're tank shocking this big boy into melee. So that is to be not forgotten. And when times do get desperate and you want to, you know, push your tanks around, this thing can definitely run into things. And with a tank shot, you know, it could kill maybe 2 or 3 models. So it's only been about 12 minutes, but is this a competitive choice? And I say this, and I do ask myself because I field this unit. Another thing to think about is that this is only what the pros call one activation in the game. It's only one unit can do, you know, it can do literally just one thing in inverted commas, versus the Manticore and a Scout Sentinel, 2 separate things. You know, they can obviously shoot 2 separate things. They can movement block 2 separate things. They can go to 2 separate objectives, etc., etc. Obviously, in the Manticore, we're doing that all game. But the Praetor being by itself means it's going to basically, you've got 275 points, an eighth of your army sat on one piece of the board where you need it to keep completely still to take advantage of its organic rule. Yeah, now the Manticore can drive around, and if it's going into the right target, you know, if it's got a blast keyword target, you're going to be getting re-rolls to hit, so it doesn't need to stay stationary. And obviously, with that point, you can also Scout Sentinel, which of course can movement block. You can contest objectives. It can do actions as what we used to call them in 9th edition, or buff other units. And that would be 240 points between the two, which means you've got a spare 15 points, enough for the Grand Strategist enhancement, or basically almost there to get a Cyclops demolition vehicle. So basically, almost, you know, you've almost got 3 units for the cost of 1. So from that, what do I think? So I think it's 275 means it's probably, you know, again, if you're playing in tournaments, want to be hyper competitive, like I do, and I play in tournaments, want to win not win tournaments, but win games. Is it a competitive choice? It's probably like, if this is an absolute yes, it's probably hovering just beneath it. If it was costed at say 250, maybe, probably a bit 275 feels a big part of your list. That, you know, it can still contribute. Yeah, if things get drastic, and you know, your opponent's pushed all the way through their screens and they've got in amongst your deployment zone, you know, this thing could drive forward and ram into things and have more confidence this thing surviving, you know, going into some melee dudes than a Manticore or Basilisk with 11 wins and 3+ save, you know. And that potentially points to how you deploy this thing, you know. Do you basically hide your Manticores on the home objective, given they're a bit less survivable, or your Basilisks, and have the Praetor more riskily deployed, in the sense it's a bit further up, one has got like a nice tight set of cover protecting it, either from direct line shooting or from charging. With the notion, you know, 18 wounds means it probably will stand, you know, 1.5 turns of aggressive melee. You know, because most melee, unless it's super nasty melee from a character, is AP2, so, you know, saving on 4s, you know, and they've got to get through 9, which basically means they have to put in 18 wound rolls into you, because you've got a 4+ save, means you have to fail, you have to get through 9 at damage 2. So, yeah, it's certainly an interesting model. I don't think I've seen it in anyone's list out there, and I look at the odd like competitive list every now and again. That will be due to cost. Probably, yeah, and you can get forged, you can get recast, which I got it for £55 or massive discount from China. So probably not common because of cost. Also, it was incredibly hard to put together, and a huge problem I basically discovered is I couldn't actually find out a way to have the awesome rockets exposed. It ends up just being like a closed thing, which it still looks cool, but I would have liked it with the rocket showing, because there is some very nice interior detail, which is all now just buried inside here, which is a bit of a shame. So yeah, I'm not gonna, it's hard for me to make a decision, and I'm biased because I've got it, I want to run it, I want to play it at tournaments, but, you know, would I take it? I mean, if I was being really harsh on myself, I'd say, Jeff, take another Manticore, take a Scout Sentinel, you've got spare 15 points, find 10 points, take a Cyclops Demolition Vehicle, and suddenly you've got 3 units for the price of 1. But is it cool? Absolutely. The joke I've got with some of my patrons is that if you drop it on your foot, you actually break your foot. And I also say when I take it, if I'm going to take it in my carry case, I'll be giving myself some light bicep reps, because it's so bloody heavy. So what do you think? If you've got experience using this model, let me know. If you've got experience building this model or painting it, share the challenges you experience, because I had many. But what do you think? 275 points for this absolute brick of resin. Its profiles are pretty interesting. I think there definitely is merit here. You know, it's more effective into medium infantry, and it's arguably more effective into you know, high survivability based monsters or vehicles, and very accurate. So yeah, share your thoughts on this one. I'd love to get your perspective. I'm not super convinced which way I'm going to go, if I'm going to take it to any RTs I'll have planned in the next couple of months. But yeah, so thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, want to support me, you can do so with a like, comment, or by subscribing. If you're feeling super generous, you can join my Patreon platoon, or simply watch any of my other YouTube videos. I'm a true Astra Militarum variety channel. I cover everything from the hobby aspects, the tactical aspect like this video here, and also lore. A massive thanks to my current supporters. So get your bayonet sharp, lasgun oiled, faith for the Emperor strong, Patreon platoon, sound off. Tank Commander Glenn, Tank Commander Watchdog Van Etten, Tank Commander Mitchell, Lieutenant Burke Nielsen, Colour Sergeant DuPont, Sergeant Adal, the Colonel Merrill, Chosen Man Smith, Veteran Gibson, Hall, Lundeen, Guardsman Beard, Coquelin, Flint, Hills, Malik, Nitin, Nguyen, Tom, Tompkin, Conscript de Paz, England, Evan Gunn, Gillian, Goodwin, King.